Why you wouldn't survive a Roman gladiator school. Before we begin, what hour found you here tonight? Can't sleep. Neither can many others. Drop your time below. I always read them. Congratulations. You've been purchased. Not hired. Not recruited. Not offered a promising new position with benefits and room for advancement. No. A man with a clipboard and dead eyes bought you like someone might buy a mule that's already limping. And you, in your infinite misfortune, are now the proud property of Ludus Ferox, the local gladiator school, which looks less like a school and more like a prison yard, wrapped in dry rot and sweat. The air stinks of stale urine, blood, and whatever died in the corner 2 weeks ago and hasn't stopped fermenting. The moment you're shoved through the iron gate, the smell hits you like a drunken uppercut. You gag. Someone behind you laughs, not kindly. That would be your fellow trainees, or rather, the future bruises and betrayals you'll be sleeping next to for the foreseeable future. A man in a red tunic and a scowl made of leather walks up and doesn't even bother to introduce himself. He jabs a stick at your chest. Name? You. Open your mouth. Say something vaguely human. Wrong, he says. Your name is Worm. Until you earn a better one. Charming. Welcome to the Ludus. You're marched into the holding barracks. A dim, low-ceilinged stone bunker that manages to be both too hot and somehow also damp. There's straw on the floor, if you can call it straw. Most of it is lice-holding hands. You're given a rough tunic the color of dust and the texture of disappointment. Then you're assigned a mat that smells like betrayal and dried pus. No blanket. No pillow. Not even a friendly rat to whisper bedtime encouragements. You lie down anyway. You're exhausted. You're sore from the transport wagon. You're pretty sure the guy to your left is already dead. And then the bell rings. It's not really a bell. It's more of a rusty gong that someone smashes with a hammer made from another trainee's femur. But it means one thing: morning training. Which is hilarious, because it's still dark outside, and you haven't slept a moment. But who cares? You're property now, and property doesn't need rest. Out in the yard, torches flicker. Sand crunches beneath your feet. The training arena is just a big oval pit filled with other victims in various states of panic, confusion, and scar tissue. One of them, a lean man with a missing ear and the kind of eyes you don't make contact with, tells you to stand up straight or you'll get whipped. You thank him. He doesn't respond. A horn blows. The silence that follows is the kind of silence that sounds like dying hope. Then he arrives, Doctor. That's not his real name, but it's what everyone calls him. The head trainer. The one whose entire personality is forged from pain and misplaced rage. He walks like his feet are allergic to softness. He carries a wooden staff that's definitely been used for things other than pointing. And he talks like every word is a punishment. You are here because you were worthless outside. He growls. Thieves, rebels, slaves, drunks, trash. He walks down the line. You are now fighters. You will eat like fighters. You will train like fighters. You will either die fast or slowly and screaming. If you're lucky, you die in front of a crowd. If you're unlucky, you die here and no one even remembers your name. He stops in front of you. Looks you up and down like you're the worst. Part of a bad lunch. You, Worm. You look like you cry when sandals rub wrong. And you do, but that's not the point. He moves on. The staff cracks against someone's thigh. Not yours, thankfully. And the first exercise begins. Running. Not in circles. Not on a track. Just running in sand. In sandals made of twine and regret. With no water. And no end in sight. You're told to run until your legs stop working, and then crawl, and then run again. Your lungs burn like they're being boiled in vinegar. Your heart tries to escape through your chest. You pass a man vomiting, and another one sobbing while whispering the name, Mama. This is hour 1. By the time you're allowed to stop, you've lost the ability to sweat. Your tunic is clinging to your ribs like a shroud. You collapse next to someone who smells like a dying goat and mutters in Gaulish between sobs. You ask if this is the worst part. He laughs until he coughs up blood. And then, weapons training, because running wasn't bad enough. Now you're handed a practice sword, wood, heavy, unbalanced, and designed to hurt you more than anyone you swing it at. You're paired with a partner twice your size, half your patience, and with a face like someone who already killed their conscience for fun. Your job is to block, not hit. You don't know how to block. You learn very quickly, or rather, you fail very quickly and get hit in the ribs, then in the jaw, then in the thigh, then in the pride. Doctore walks by and doesn't even look. He does stop long enough to jab your bruised shoulder and mutter, "At least you're bleeding now. That means something's working." By midday, you are one massive throbbing bruise with a side of shame. You're given a bowl of barley mush, so bland it tastes like apathy. You eat it anyway, you hate yourself the whole time. Someone passes you a hunk of bread that may actually be a rock. You don't care, you chew. The afternoon is more of the same, dodging, swinging, falling, gasping. No one smiles, no one talks unless it's to curse or scream. One man tries to run. He makes it 6 steps before a net wraps around his neck and 3 guards beat the rebellion out of him with sticks. He'll live. Probably, but not above ground. You crawl back to your mat as the sun begins to die, wondering how you still have bones. Your hands are raw, your legs twitch without permission. You close your eyes and hope for death or unconsciousness, whichever comes faster. Then the gong sounds again. Night drills, because of course it does. You thought maybe, just maybe, you'd earned a moment of sleep. But this is Gladiator school, not a spa. And that clanging gong? It means night drills, which is Latin for congratulations, now suffer in the dark. You stumble upright. Every joint protests. Your knees have staged a rebellion. Your spine files for divorce. You consider just staying down and letting fate sort you into the pile of ex-trainees. But someone kicks your ribs and calls you worm again, and you remember you don't get to make choices anymore. Outside, the sand is colder now. Sharp, with dew, lit by torchlight and the dying embers of a dozen shattered souls. Doctore stands tall, arms folded, watching you all like a disappointed god. Somewhere behind him, a junior trainer carries a crate of wooden shields and snarls. Grab one. Try not to die with it. You grab one. It's cracked. It smells like a man who gave up hope halfway through a parry. Tonight's lesson is formation defense, a fancy term for pretend to be a unit while we throw things at you. You form a shaky line with the others, some limping, some barely. Conscious, one man clearly concussed and humming what sounds like a lullaby. "Shields up!" someone shouts. You raise yours a second too late and catch a rock right in the forehead. Stars, pain, laughter. Not yours. Doctore walks past, slow and disappointed. "That shield is to protect your face," he mutters. "Not showcase it. More rocks, then wooden spears. Then actual blunt training swords hurled like javelins by trainees who are clearly taking out personal grudges. You duck, you flinch, you fail. Again and again. Every hit teaches you something new. For instance, pain has flavors. A rib hit tastes different from a thigh hit. A groin hit, that one tastes like betrayal and copper. You make it through barely. But your shield is now mostly splinters, your arms are jelly, and your sense of self-worth has been reduced to a greasy smear on the practice sand. Then you're told to clean the training yard. Yes, clean. As in, pick up the straw, collect the cracked weapons, scrub blood from the posts, and shovel what is, let's be honest, probably human waste from the corners. One trainee refuses, says he's above this, that he's a warrior, not a servant. They flog him until the difference stops mattering. You keep your mouth shut and your head down. Good choice. Smart worm. It's deep night when you're finally allowed to crawl back to your mat. You don't lie down so much as collapse. The straw pokes into your back like 1,000 itchy knives. But at this point, you could be sleeping on a pile of bricks and broken dreams, and it'd still feel better than standing. Someone near you is crying. Someone else is praying, Third person is snoring with the eerie calm of someone who's either truly at peace or has accepted they'll die tomorrow and is getting a head start. You drift into unconsciousness, but your dreams aren't restful. You dream of sand in your lungs and blood on your hands and a crowd roaring for your death, not out of malice, but because that's just what they paid to see. Entertainment, they'll call it. Spectacle. You wake up an hour later to the sounds of footsteps, quiet, secretive. Someone's trying to escape. You peek through half-lidded eyes and watch as a boy, no older than 16, creeps toward the wall. He's small, pale, shaking, probably sold into this hell by debt or desperation. He reaches the wall and starts to climb. You don't say anything. You're not a hero, but the guard says something. Specifically, he says, "Gotcha." Then comes the thunk of a net, the crack of a club, and the soft, wet thud of dreams breaking apart on stone. The boy doesn't come back. No one asks where he went. Everyone already knows. In the morning, his mat is gone. His name is gone. His memory. That's your problem now, and it sticks with you like a bruise under your skin. At breakfast, you get a cold bowl of lentils and a hunk of bread harder than regret. You eat it while staring into nothing, chewing around the taste of someone else's vanished future. Dottore walks by again. "Today, you will learn to kill," he says flatly. No ceremony, no explanation. Just, it's time. You don't ask what happened to learning to survive first. You already know the answer. Survival isn't the point. Pain is. Spectacle is. And you're not here to grow. You're here to die in a way that sells tickets. You're led out into the bright sun of the yard, where wooden dummies have been set up. Shaped like men, filled with hay, marked with red lines at the throat, chest, gut. Doctor points at them. With his staff, "These are your enemies. Learn where they bleed. You swing your training sword. You miss. You swing again. You hit, but it's too soft." He watches, unmoved. Again, 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 again. By the 5th hour, your arms are shaking, your fingers are blistered open, and the dummy has more dents than straw. You want to stop. Your body begs. Your mind pleads. But you remember the boy, the escape, the thud, and you keep swinging. Because you understand now. You're not here to win. You're here to not lose fast. At the end of the day, as the sun bleeds over the wall, Dottore walks among you again. He stops by your dummy, squints at your work, then gives the faintest nod, not approval, more like, "You didn't embarrass yourself today." It's the closest thing to praise you'll get. You return to the barracks. No one talks. No one needs to. The silence is louder than words. You lie down on your mat and close your eyes. And as sleep pulls you under, one final thought flickers. In your mind, this was only day one. You wake up because someone throws a sandal at your face. Not gently, not playfully. It hits you nose first, smells like foot rot and lost dreams, and sticks long enough to leave an emotional scar. You peel it off, groaning like an ancient door hinge, and sit up in a room full of groaning, bruised, half-dead men, who all look like they've spent the night fighting bears in their sleep. Mourning in the ludus. Your body feels like it was beaten, with iron rods by a committee of angry blacksmiths. Your arms don't bend right. Your ribs make that suspicious creaky noise every time you breathe in. And your thighs, well, you now understand what it's like to have sandpaper for muscles. But none of that matters, because the gong of eternal misery, just rang, which means it's time for breakfast. Not time to eat, mind you. Just time to experience breakfast, Gladiator style. You limp your way to the mess line, which is less a line and more a disorderly mob of human-shaped wounds wearing dirt. You clutch your wooden bowl, your most prized possession, because it's the only thing here that hasn't tried to kill you yet, and brace yourself for culinary despair. And then you see it, the cauldron. It bubbles ominously. It smells like damp wheat and unwashed hands. A thick wooden ladle is dunked into it by a cook, who looks like he's halfway through decomposing. His tunic is stained with things you pray are food-related. He grunts, scoops a glob of something tan and tragic, and slaps it into your bowl, like he's offended you asked. Raw barley mash, cold, chunky, flavorless. You shovel it into your mouth with fingers because spoons are for winners, and you are emphatically not a winner. The texture is like eating regret. Wet, grainy regret with the faint aftertaste of rust and sadness. You try not to gag. You fail, but keep chewing anyway, because the only thing worse than eating this is fighting hungry. Next to you, a fellow trainee, older, scarred, with one eye that twitches when he blinks, stares down into his bowl like it holds the secrets of the universe. If you chew it 50 times, it stops tasting like barley, he mutters. You try. It doesn't. A few unlucky bastards ask for seconds. They're given side-eye and a second scoop of humiliation. One vomits it back up on his own feet. The cook doesn't react. He's seen worse. You're pretty sure he's caused worse. You sit on a stone bench, hunched, gnawing, trying to convince your stomach this counts as nourishment. All around you are men too tired to speak. Some wince with each bite. Others just stare at the wall like it owes them money. And then Dottore shows up. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The air shifts when he arrives, like fear has its own gravity. Everyone straightens, even the ones who physically can't. You do your best to look alive, despite actively dying inside. Dottore surveys the crowd like a disappointed parent at a failed birthday party. He gestures to a trainee, a younger man with shaky hands and a bad habit of asking questions, and barks, "You, explain why you're not eating." The man stammers, I have a bad stomach today." Dottore nods once. Then he slams his staff across the man's midsection. "Now you have a worse stomach." The man curls into a ball. Dottore moves on. "Strength," he says, voice like gravel, soaked in blood, "comes from what you endure, not what you enjoy." He lets that hang in the air. Eat, or die faster. And just like that, he's gone. Like a passing fever dream that smells like sweat and punishment. You finish your barley. Mush. You hate every bite of it. You hate the man who made it. You hate the man who beat someone for not eating it. And most of all, you hate that he's right. Because somehow, after choking it down, you do feel a little less like death. Which means it's time to train again. Because of course it is. You're barely finished wiping the last gluey traces of barley paste from your fingers when the order is barked. To the yard. No rest, no digestion, just combat drills on a full stomach of bland cement. You line up with the others under the pitiless Roman sun. It's not warm, it's vengeful. The kind of sun that doesn't just burn your skin, it judges it. Your tunic sticks to your back in ways that feel medically inadvisable, and you can already smell the familiar cocktail of sweat, panic, and someone's infected foot wound wafting across the sand. Dottore appears, as always, without footsteps, as if conjured from sheer intimidation. Today, he's holding a gladius, not a wooden training sword. A real one, iron, heavy, sharp enough to make your intestines cry just from proximity. This, he says, holding it aloft like a cursed artifact, is what you earn, if you live long enough. He tosses it to the ground with a clang that feels like a guillotine falling in your soul. You don't even reach for it. No one does. That's the test. The first one to grab it loses a hand. Probably not as punishment, just as an example. He paces in front of you, voice rising like a funeral chant. Gladiators are not born. They are forged. Through pain, through failure, through each other's blood. He stops. You! Worm! Of course. It's always you. You'll fight first today. You want to protest. You want to remind him that your spine is still rebooting from yesterday's beating, and you just ate half a bowl of sadness for breakfast. Instead, you nod. Because fear has replaced all other bodily functions. Your opponent steps forward. A broad-shouldered man with a broken nose, a crooked grin, and muscles that look like they've eaten people. He twirls his wooden sword like he enjoys it too much. You don't even know his name. You just know you don't like the way he's looking at your neck. You're given your own weapon, lighter than his, shorter, possibly cursed. Begin. There's no horn, no drum roll, no dramatic pause, just the word, and the blur of pain that follows. He lunges. You block. Barely. The impact sends a shock through your arms like you've just high-fived a lightning bolt. He swings again. You duck. Sort of. You mostly just fall sideways and manage to flail your blade in the direction of his legs. A hit. Accidental, but a hit. The crowd of other trainees doesn't cheer. They grunt. That's the most praise you'll get. He growls and brings his sword down hard on your shoulder. You scream in a voice you don't recognize as human. You drop to one knee. Up, Doctor snaps. You drop your guard. You drop your life. You rise. Because somehow, shame lifts heavier weight than strength. You circle. You dodge. You try to think. But every thought is swallowed by survival instinct and pain. He charges. You sidestep. He stumbles. You jab. And for the first time in your life, you land a blow that wasn't entirely an accident. He reels. You stare. Doctor claps. Once. Just once. Like thunder. That's the moment. The edge. You saw it. You also saw your opponent's rage. He barrels back toward you and knocks you flat on your back. You feel a rib crack. Probably. Hard to tell with all the other noises your body is making. You curl up, breath wheezing, mouth full of sand and iron and embarrassment. Doctore doesn't stop him. He waits. Then finally, with a grunt of disgust, he calls the fight. Enough. Your opponent spits in the sand and walks off, victorious but unbothered. You're helped to your feet by a different trainee, a quiet man with bandaged hands and eyes that look like they've watched too many friends die slowly. Don't flinch, he says. You nod, but you're not sure if your neck still works. The rest of the day is a blur of bruises and barked orders. You run. You fall. You hold up a shield until your arms go numb. You learn that when they say training, they mean conditioning. As in, conditioning you to live with agony until you stop noticing it. At one point, a fellow recruit collapses, face first, into the sand. Heat stroke, or heart failure, or just bad luck. No one stops. Not even Doctor. He simply steps over the body and shouts, "The dead will not be fed tonight." You keep going, because stopping is death. Not dramatic death, not heroic, not arena death, just forgotten, sun-dried, and kicked aside like bad meat. By sunset, your tunic is stained dark from sweat and something else you can't identify. You drink water so fast, you nearly drown in it. Your hands are trembling. Your teeth chatter, even though it's still warm. Your mind goes blank every time. Someone says your name, which is still Worm, by the way. Dinner is barley again. But this time you eat it with purpose. Because somehow, through cracked bones and failing muscles and the crushing weight of despair, you're still here. Barely. You sit next to the quiet trainee. He doesn't speak, just eats in silence, like the food might vanish if he breathes wrong. You nod at him. He nods back. That's as close to friendship as anyone here gets. When the gong rings for sleep, you don't crawl. You ooze toward your mat. You collapse face down and dream of sandstorms and swords and the sound of your own bones being used as percussion instruments. And as your mind slips into that half-dead limbo between exhaustion and oblivion, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. The barley wasn't the worst part of your day. It was the best. At first, you thought Doctor hated everyone equally, that his contempt was a general atmospheric condition, like heat or sand in your underwear. But today, as you watch him walk down the line of trainees with his arms folded and his jaw clenched like a fist, it becomes abundantly clear. No, he hates you specifically. Maybe it's your face. Maybe it's the sound your joints make when you try to kneel. Maybe he just looked into your soul and didn't like the decor. But there's something about your continued existence that seems to awaken an ancient and personal fury in him. You call that a fighting stance. He barks, striding toward you. I've seen drunk goats with better balance. You adjust your feet. Worse, you adjust again. Worse still. Now you look like you're trying to seduce the floor. You want to say something. A protest, maybe, or an apology, or just a pitiful grunt of survival. But he doesn't give you the chance. Crack. His staff hits the back of your knee. You drop like a sack of wet flour. Too slow, he says. The sand moves faster than you, and it's already dead. He turns to the others. This is what happens when you let pity into the arena. You die. Then your opponent steps on your face while waving to the crowd. He stomps back down the line, correcting stances, insulting jawlines, personally offending someone's mother, and demonstrating, again, how to swing a wooden sword like you mean it, not like you're trying. To politely introduce yourself to a man's ribs. Dottore is a man who believes in three things: pain, volume, and posture. If your back isn't straight, he straightens it with his staff. If your strikes aren't clean, he shows you, usually by hitting you in the exact spot you should have struck. If you breathe wrong, he lectures your lungs personally. You. Worm! You flinch, of course. Why do you always blink before you strike? You didn't even know you were doing that. He mimics you. An exaggerated flinch, a weak swing, a tragic wheeze. This is how babies fight. Not men, not gladiators. Are you a baby? You think saying no is the right answer. You are wrong. He hits your shoulder. Then stop fighting like one. You nod, or at least you try. Your neck no longer seems to believe in verticality. Training continues. Today's special is one-on-one weapon drills under the blazing scrutiny of Dottore's hate beam eyes. You are paired again with the same man who nearly dislocated your jaw yesterday. You're starting to think Dottore assigns these matches by asking himself, what would be funniest if this trainee died horribly? You take your position, you raise your sword, you blink. Wrong! He shouts it from across the yard. You freeze. Did you blink again? You want to say no, but your body betrays you by blinking in response to the question. Dottore storms toward you. Not walks, not jogs. Storms. He snatches your training sword, swings it in a blur of perfect, murderous grace, and then jabs it an inch from your throat. Your enemy sees your blink. He smiles. He knows you're afraid. He buries a blade in your belly, and the crowd cheers while your intestines wave goodbye. He drops the sword back into your stunned hands. Now go again, and try, just once, not to look like a frightened pastry. You try. Gods help you. You try. You strike. You focus. You remember to breathe, to swing from your hips, to not blink. You blink. Dottore groans like someone just insulted his ancestors. Hopeless, he mutters. You'll be lucky if the lions are too full to finish you. The rest of the day continues under his watchful, malevolent presence. You are yelled at for walking wrong, for breathing loudly, for holding your shield like a wet towel at a bathhouse. At one point, he makes you stand with your arms raised for a full hour, holding 2 buckets of sand while repeating, I am not a pastry, I am a gladiator. Laughter erupts around you. No one helps. You wouldn't either. But here's the worst part. Deep down, in the ragged, blistered heart of you, you start to get it. He's not just breaking your body. He's erasing the part of you that still thinks survival is optional. He's turning you into something that moves on instinct, not fear, not hesitation. And maybe, if your arms stop shaking long enough, you'll be able to hit back. You thought your one-on-one humiliation was the highlight of the day, but Dottore is nothing if not a maestro of misery. And now he's moved on to group drills, a team-building exercise designed mostly to expose everyone's weaknesses in front of each other while soaking in their collective despair. You and 3 other trainees are handed mismatched shields, shoved into a loose formation and told to hold the line against incoming attackers. The attackers? Other trainees, slightly bigger, slightly faster, slightly less likely to cry in public. You barely have time to register who's swinging at you before a practice spear slams into your shield and knocks you backward into your teammate. A man named Secundus who smells like fermented onions and keeps muttering about the gods abandoning him. Fair enough. The formation collapses almost instantly. Doctor sighs. A deep, theatrical sigh full of disappointment and malice. You four, he snarls. Are the reason Rome still needs walls. He orders you to reset. You do. This time, you're told to shout together, something about unity, something about timing. You forget the words halfway through and mumble, crack. His staff kisses the back of your thigh. Again, you try again. More chaos, more shouting. Secundus forgets which way to turn. Someone drops their shield. You nearly take a wooden gladius to the ear. It's going great. Doctore watches, unmoved, arms crossed like a statue that judges for a living. Datu, you think in the arena, your enemies will wait for you to coordinate, that they'll politely ask if you're ready. He throws a helmet at your feet, not to you, at you. Put it on, you'll need it. You bend to pick it up. It's dented, blood-stained, slightly too small. You jam it on your head anyway and feel. Your ears fold in like defeated soldiers. The world narrows to a tunnel of heat, echoing with breath and pain. Again, you try. Again, and again. Each attempt is worse than the last somehow. Someone gets stepped on. Someone else trips and takes down the whole line. You get elbowed in the jaw and bite your tongue. Now your mouth tastes like copper and shame. Doctor finally loses patience, which is impressive, considering it was never clear he had any to begin with. He storms in, grabs your shield, and demonstrates exactly how it's supposed to be done. Feet firm, shield up, eyes locked forward. He moves like violence incarnate, efficient, brutal, and terrifying. He shoves Secundus into place, adjusts your grip, and barks the rhythm. When I say move, you move. When I say strike, you strike. When I say die, you better make it dramatic. You nod. Everyone nods. And then you actually try. And this time, you don't suck entirely. It's not clean. It's not glorious. But for the first time, your unit holds. You block. You swing in unison. You even manage to not fall over. A miracle, really. Doctor watches, doesn't smile. But he doesn't yell either, which from him is high praise. You might yet become less than useless, he mutters. Then louder, now again, and faster. Training continues into dusk. Your arms shake, your lungs wheeze, your vision swims. You've been smacked, kicked, shouted at, and nearly trampled. But for some reason, you haven't collapsed. That might be progress, or it might be delirium. Dinner is cold lentils and hard bread again. You eat with numb fingers. Across from you, Secundus stares blankly into the void, his forehead still red from where his helmet got stuck earlier. Doctore's going to kill me, he says. You nod. Us, probably, you offer. He chuckles, a dry, cracked sound. Yeah, but at least he'll do it efficiently. You crawl to your mat like a half-dead beetle. Your body screams for rest. Your bones feel loose, like they're floating around in your skin without proper supervision. You lie there in silence, staring at the ceiling, wondering if tomorrow will be worse. Of course it will. Doctore hasn't even started real combat drills yet. And as sleep drags you under, you hear his voice echo in your skull. You fight like a worm. But maybe, someday, you'll die like a man. You are woken by the sound of cheering. Not laughter, not conversation. Cheering, from beyond the walls of the ludus. Loud, raw, animalistic. The kind of sound that doesn't come from joy, but from bloodlust. You sit up slowly, muscles cracking like old leather. You're not rested. You're never rested. But this noise is new. It's not morning drills. It's not Doctor screaming about your posture. It's the arena. You shuffle out with the others. The yard is strangely quiet. No weapons, no yelling, no surprise punishments yet. Just a row of grim-faced trainers waiting by the archway. And then Doctor steps forward with his usual expression, part disdain, part boredom, part disappointment that you're still breathing. "You," he says, pointing directly at you like he's been waiting for this moment. "Today, you fight. You blink." He smiles. That's how you know you're in real trouble. The others don't react. No one gasps. No one whispers. They all know what this means. Your first fight. Not practice. Not drills. Not getting smacked with a wooden sword by some sadist. With a grudge. This is your debut. And by debut, they mean you're going into a ring surrounded by screaming strangers against someone who's very good at killing people for sport. You're handed a helmet, a gladius, a small curved shield. All real, all heavy, all previously owned by people who are now dead or limping around with a limp that makes strangers uncomfortable. The helmet smells like fear. The gladius is chipped. The shield has a name, scratched into the leather. It's not yours. You ask stupidly, "Who am I fighting?" Doctore doesn't answer. Another trainer does, grinning like a man who enjoys bad news. Bone Crusher. You wait for the punchline. There isn't one. Bone Crusher, it turns out, is not just a nickname. It's a description. You see him when you're led through the gate into the holding pen beneath the arena. A tall, wide man with a face like a cliff and a torso built from agony. His chest is bare. His fists are wrapped in leather. His weapon of choice, a club, a literal club. Not decorative, not ceremonial, just a blunt, heavy stick made for smashing rib cages like overripe melons. Isn't he a bit advanced for me, you ask? No one answers. You are oiled, dusted with sand, shoved toward the gate. The cheering above is louder now. Doctore appears beside you one last time, leans close, and speaks calmly. This is your test. You survive. You earn a name. You fall. You feed the crowd. Either way, you're useful. The gate opens. You step out into light. Blinding, burning, punishing light. The arena is enormous. Not a grand stadium like the Colosseum, no, but a provincial amphitheater. Rows of shouting citizens, rich, poor, drunk, blood-hungry, stare down at you like you're a dish being served. Some are already pointing. Others are placing bets. Bone Crusher is already in the center of the ring, breathing heavily, pacing like a bull. He doesn't look nervous. He looks hungry. You grip your shield tighter and feel the slick of sweat already forming under your arms. The announcer, some peacock in golden robes, waves a hand and shouts your names. Well, his name. Your name is still Worm, or maybe Meat. You're not sure anymore. The crowd roars, the horn blows, and Bone Crusher charges. There's no grace in it, no elegance, just raw, stomping violence. You barely lift your shield before his club slams into it, and the shock rattles through your body like lightning in a skeleton. You stumble backward, almost trip, recover just in time to raise your sword. You swing. You miss. He laughs, a booming, terrible sound, and swings again. You block, sort of. The shield holds, but just barely, and your arm is already numb. You backpedal. Dust flies. The crowd loves it. Somewhere above, someone throws a chicken bone into the ring. You nearly slip on it. You jab forward, aiming low, trying to land something. Your blade nicks his thigh. He doesn't even flinch. Instead, he grabs a handful of sand and throws it in your face. Blinded, coughing, dazed. You stagger left and swing wildly. You hit air. Your foot twists in a rut in the ground and suddenly you're on your knees. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just crumpled. He looms over you, club raised high. You think, this is it. This is how you die, in a sun-drenched pit, choking, on sand and shame, in front of people who will forget your face before dinner. Then instinct kicks in. You roll, clumsy, desperate, ugly, but enough. His club slams down where your head was, cracking the earth. You scramble up, swing with everything you have, and catch him across the back. He snarls, not pain, more like surprise. He turns. You brace. And for the first time, you see it in his eyes. Not anger, not hunger, but respect. Brief, barely there, but real. And then he swings again. Your arm is shaking. Your shield is dented. Your breath is ragged, shallow, coated with the metallic taste of fear. The sand stings your eyes. The crowd's roar has turned into a single, booming noise in your skull, like standing inside a drum someone keeps hitting with a war mallet. But you're still standing, and that's more than you expected. Bone Crusher circles you now. He's slower than before, no longer charging like a bull, but pacing, watching. Maybe he's trying to figure out how you're still conscious. Maybe he's toying with you, or maybe he just enjoys stretching it out, like a cat playing with a dying mouse, savoring the twitch. He swings again, wide. You duck. Not gracefully, more like a sack of potatoes tipping over. But it works. The club whistles over your head. You slash forward. Your blade scrapes his side. Blood. Not much, but enough to stain the dust. The crowd howls. Your reward? A fist to the gut. He drops the club just long enough to punch you in the stomach with the force of a collapsing temple. Air exits your lungs. You bend in half. Your vision narrows to a single blinding dot of pain. You hear laughter. Not his. The crowd's. Apparently, a half-dead worm wheezing like a broken flute is entertaining. You try to remember what Doctor said about dignity, but you can't, because there's none left. Bone Crusher retrieves his club. You lurch sideways, sword dangling like it weighs 100 pounds, and somehow manage to stay upright. He charges again. You throw up your shield, and it shatters under the blow, a brutal crunch that sends you sprawling to the ground. Now, your left arm doesn't work, not even a little. You roll, gasping, covered in dust, blood, and the pulverized remains of your last hope. And still, you get up. The club slams into the ground beside you. Again and again, you dodge by inches, not by skill, just by sheer quivering panic. You swing with your good hand and slice across his thigh, deeper this time. He grunts. That one hurt. You're sure of it. He stumbles, just a bit. And that's all you need, because you've been learning something over the last few weeks. Not how to be strong, not how to be skilled, but how to take hits. You lunge, closer than he expects. Too close for a proper club swing. You slam your shoulder into his chest and he staggers. You grab your sword with both hands, even the one that won't grip properly, and bring it down across his back. He roars. You're not winning, but you're not dying fast enough to please him, and that means you're making it hard. The crowd loves this. They were promised a slaughter. What they got instead was a struggle. Messy, uneven, ugly. But struggle is better than victory. Struggle gets cheers, and blood gets bets. He whirls around and punches you again, this time in the ribs. You hear something crack. Doesn't matter. You're still moving. You don't even think anymore. You just react. He swings. You duck. He overextends. You stab. Your blade drives into his side, deep, just below the ribs. His eyes go wide, not in pain, in disbelief. You step back. Blood is pouring now. He stumbles, tries to lift the club, fails, and then he drops. Sand. Silence. Just for a moment. Then the crowd erupts. Not in approval, not in awe, in fury, because you robbed them of a spectacle. They wanted your death. Slow, loud, satisfying. Instead, you gave them survival. Clumsy, desperate, undignified. You almost feel bad. Almost. Doctor steps into the ring. He doesn't smile. Of course not. But he nods. He turns to the crowd and raises your limp arm, the one that still sort of works. You're Victor. Worm. A few polite claps, a few angry boos. One guy throws a cabbage. You don't care. You're alive. Bone Crusher groans. Still breathing, not dead, just broken. The medics drag him away. He'll fight again. Maybe. Probably. And when he does, he'll... Remember you? Back in the Ludus, you collapse against the wall. Your fellow trainees don't cheer. They just nod. Quiet nods. The kind men give when they see someone return from hell with the smoke still in their eyes. Secundus hands you a flask. You earn that. You drink, water, warm, tastes like glory. Doctore appears beside you. You're not good, he says, but you're hard to kill. He walks away, and that's the nicest thing anyone's said to you since you got here. You eat dinner with trembling hands, barley again. You don't complain. You sleep without dreams. And for the first time, you're not just a body in the sand. You're a fighter. You wake up to the distinct realization that your entire body is revolting against you. Not in protest, in open rebellion. Your neck doesn't turn. Your shoulder has decided it's decorative only. And your ribs feel like someone poured gravel between the bones and then punched it into place. Congratulations. You survived your first real fight. And now it's time for your reward. Roman medicine. You shuffle, no, drag yourself across the training yard toward the infirmary. It's not really an infirmary, more like a room that smells like mildew and regret, lined with straw mats and jars of questionable contents. The medicus, a man who introduces himself only as Cassius, has the hygiene standards of a battlefield crow and the bedside manner of a tax collector. You don't get a hello. You get a grunt and a wave toward the mat that looks least like it's growing mold. He squints at you, pokes your ribs with 2 fingers and says, cracked, maybe broken. You still breathing? You nod. Good. That means you'll heal. Then he pours vinegar on your side without warning. The scream you make is not dignified. It's not human. It's the sound of a man who just watched his soul attempt to leap out of his body to avoid another splash. Cassius frowns. Oh, stop it, he mutters. The Greeks use this for everything. It builds character. You try to reply, but your lungs are too busy filing a complaint. He moves onto your arm. Sprained, maybe fractured. He doesn't really care which. He pulls out a wooden splint that looks like it was used in 3 previous deaths, ties it tight with a leather cord, and smacks the top with his palm to set it. You bite your tongue so hard you taste pennies. I had a man once, Cassius says conversationally. Took a trident to the thigh, pulled it out himself, walked crooked the rest of his life, but never missed a fight. You nod, mostly to signal that you'd rather not hear what happened next. Cassius dabs a bit of something brown and sticky on a gash near your collarbone. Fig sap and ash, he explains. Keeps it from festering. You're pretty sure it is festering. But you smile anyway, because objecting gets you more vinegar. While you're being mummified in linen strips that itch like betrayal, another patient stumbles in. A tall, Germanic trainee, missing several teeth and most of his dignity. Cassius doesn't flinch. Sit, bleed quietly. You're starting to understand how this place works. Injuries aren't unusual here. They're expected. Normal. Practically mandatory. Every man in this ludus carries a limp, a scar, or a part of him that doesn't quite move like it used to. The lucky ones keep their symmetry. The unlucky ones are remembered by phrases like, he fought well, but his arm fell off. Doctor steps in midway through your bandaging and raises an eyebrow. Alive? You nod. Good. Get back to drills after lunch. You blink at him. Drills? He glares. You think you get a day off because you bled a little. You don't respond. There's no right answer. He leaves. Cassius snorts. He's right, you know. Sitting too long makes the wounds lazy. You drag yourself upright, swaying like a drunk building. Your legs still work. Barely. Your pride? Less so. But you thank Cassius, sincerely, and limp, toward the mess hall. The other trainees eye you differently now. Not like you're a joke. Not quite like you're a threat either. More like, he didn't die. Must be something in him worth watching. Secundus slides you half his bread. You fought like a spitting cat, he says. Ugly, loud, somehow still alive. You smile. Kind of. Then you cough and nearly black out. Lunch is a blur of barley, aching joints, and the sound of someone choking on a fishbone 2 benches down. No one helps. The man stops coughing eventually, or dies. Either outcome is considered an efficient resolution. You chew your food slowly because your jaw clicks now. Your left arm is bound in a splint that smells like mildew and iron. Your ribs feel like they've been rented out to a blacksmith for storage, and yet you are expected to report back to the training yard the moment you swallow your last bite. You consider faking unconsciousness, but the last man who tried, that got kicked in the spine by Doctore so hard his toes curled for a week. So instead, you drag yourself back into the sunlight and line up, shoulders crooked, arm useless, soul absent. Doctor takes one look at you and nods. Not encouragement, just acknowledgement that you're upright. Which is the bar now? Today, he growls, we learn to fight through pain. You almost laugh, because you've been doing that since day one. But you don't say it, because sarcasm earns push-ups, and your arms have formally resigned from service. The drill begins with something Doctor calls shock endurance. It's less a drill and more a legal loophole for assault. You're told to hold your shield, even the injured ones, while another trainee hits you with a wooden sword, repeatedly, at full force, until you either block, drop it, or pass out. You last 4 hits. The 5th knocks the wind out of you and nearly sends you back to Cassius with a new internal rearrangement. Doctor shakes his head. You'll die screaming. You want to say, yes, but I'll die with excellent posture. But your lungs are busy relearning how to inhale. After that comes reaction training. It involves ropes, sandbags, and a spiked wheel that spins just fast enough to keep you nervous, but not fast enough to actually kill you. You're meant to duck, roll, and counter. You mostly stumble, flail, and pray. You're slow. Your arm is useless, and every time you try to pivot, your cracked ribs remind you who's in charge now. At one point, a sandbag hits you square in the back and sends you face first into the dirt. You lie there, forehead pressed to the hot earth, wondering if you could just stay there, just become one with the dust. But a shadow looms over you. Doctor. He says nothing. He just nudges your ribs, the cracked ones, with the end of his staff. Pain flares through you like lightning in a wine barrel. You get up, because you've learned that if you don't, he'll keep poking you until your dignity breaks harder than your bones. The rest of the day is more of the same. Push-ups on splintered planks. Footwork drills through gravel. Sparring rounds where no one's told your opponent you're held together by linen and spite. Every block sends a jolt of pain through your body. Every swing reminds you your shoulder is no longer a team player, and every time you hesitate, you get yelled at. Worm. You think your enemies will wait for you to finish healing? No. No, you don't. You're just hoping they don't step on your broken side right away. At one point, your partner for the drill, a red-haired Gaul with a missing toe and a voice, like gravel soaked in mead, stops mid-swing. You're bleeding through your bandages. You glance down. He's right. The linen Cassius wrapped around your ribs is now pink, seeping, and slowly unraveling. You consider stopping, but Doctor calls out from across the yard. If you can stand, you can fight. If you can't, you're fertilizer. So you tighten the wrappings, raise your sword, and keep going. That night, you don't lie down on your mat so much as collapse into it. Every breath feels like a chore. Your bandages stick to your skin. You think one of your toenails is missing, but you're too tired to check. Secundus limps over and tosses you a handful of something. Dried figs. A rare treat. He says nothing. You nod thanks. You eat them slowly, like they're the last food you'll ever taste. In the corner, a new trainee is crying quietly. First night. Fresh meat. You don't even bother asking his name. He probably won't last the week. Your dreams are a blur of vinegar, cracked ribs, and Doctore's voice repeating, "You fight through pain, or you die through comfort." You wake up before dawn with your bandages stiff and your arm throbbing. You're expected in the yard by sunrise, because here, injuries aren't a reason to stop. They're the new normal. You know something's wrong the moment the sun rises, and no one is screaming yet. Usually by now, someone's being chased with a practice spear or crying into a barley bowl while Doctore screams about spine alignment. But this morning, the yard is quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you sweat before you've even moved. The moment you step outside, you see why. Arena drills. It's written all over the place. Real weapons laid out on racks, like a butcher's menu. Medical stretchers already pre-positioned at the edge of the yard, and several of the trainers not even pretending to be encouraging anymore. Doctore is already pacing, arms folded, gladius slung at his hip, face carved from disappointment. "This is not practice," he says. "This is preparation." You and the other trainees form a ragged semicircle around him. The wounds from your last fight still ache. The bandages itch. One man still has dried blood in his ear. No one asks questions. They've learned. Arena protocol. Doctor barks. Learn it, respect it, or die before the crowd even notices you were there. He draws a line in the sand with his staff. You enter when your name is called. You salute the crowd. You do not trip, stumble, blink, or weep. You fight to please, not just to kill. He glares at a tall Nubian trainee who once accidentally impaled a straw dummy through the crotch during drills. That doesn't mean theatrics. The crowd loves blood, not clowns. He goes down the line, assigning roles. Some are to be mock prisoners. Others mock guards. A few are unlucky enough to play the victim, the ones who are supposed to lose, but not die. Hopefully, you, of course, are paired with a partner you've never seen before. A broad, scar-faced man with crooked teeth and a body like a brick wall that learned to walk. He nods at you, doesn't introduce himself, just grunts. Don't get fancy. The two of you are assigned a match, choreographed, in theory. You're supposed to trade a few convincing blows, duck, feint, make it look real. There's even a planned ending. You win. Surprise. Sounds simple. It isn't. Because as soon as the signal is given, Brick Wall Man comes at you like he forgot the whole choreography part. His wooden sword, no longer blunted, swings just barely past your nose. You lurch back, barely dodging what would have been a new nasal profile. You counter, lightly, politely. He swings harder. The crowd, made up of local nobles today, visiting to sample the talent. They're watching from shaded seats along the far edge of the yard, sipping wine, pointing, laughing. You're trying to survive. You swing again. He blocks. He slams his shoulder into your chest and sends you skidding backward into the sand. Doctore doesn't stop it. This is the real test. Can you perform while also not dying? You scramble to your feet, parry another strike, then remember, this is a show. You're supposed to make it look close. You're supposed to make it look dangerous. But it's not acting if you're really bleeding, and your arm is starting to drip from where Brickwall's blade grazed you. He grins, says nothing, just keeps coming. You hear laughter from the stands. Someone shouts, "Make him squeal!" You do not squeal. You do, however, trip over a blood-stained shield and land flat on your back. He stands over you, sword raised. You remember the choreography. You're supposed to reverse it now. A dramatic counter. So you gamble. You sweep your leg. He stumbles. You rise, grab your sword, and lunge. Slow enough to be flashy, hard enough to make him actually backpedal. The crowd erupts. Blood spatters the sand. Someone claps. Not politely, excitedly. The fight ends. You pant. He nods once. "Good recovery," he mutters, then limps off with a bloody elbow. Doctor doesn't speak. He just gives you the look. The one that means you didn't fail. Somehow. Good. Then you're told to reset, because it's a school play, remember? And Act 1 is over. Time for Act 2. You're not sure how many rounds you fought. 3, 5. Time doesn't exist anymore. Only the scrape of steel, the sting of sweat in your eyes, and the rhythm of not dying. Your tunic is soaked. Your shoulders ache so badly, they feel fused into a single slab of pain. And still, the drills continue. This isn't practice. It's a simulation with real consequences. And the only feedback you're getting is the audience's applause every time someone bleeds more convincingly. The worst part is, you're starting to get it. The show matters more than the outcome. You've seen fights end in a single clean blow, and the nobles up in the gallery barely noticed. But throw in a dramatic stagger, a spray of blood, a last-minute reversal, and suddenly they're on their feet, toasting your misery like it's a vintage wine. Your next pairing is with a man named Diodorus, a lean, sinewy bastard who fights like he's dancing and glares at you like you personally owe him money. Doctore shouts that this one is an execution scene. You're the hero. He's the condemned criminal. You know what that means. Make it brutal, make it loud, and for the love of Jupiter, make it slow. You begin with the usual showman's flair, circling, a few flashy feints, some stage-worthy grunts of exertion. But Diodorus isn't here to entertain. He wants to prove a point. Every rehearsal strike is a hair too fast, too close, too eager, and each time you try to land a blow, he undercuts it with a smirk and a near-silent parry. The crowd watches. Doctore watches harder. Diodorus throws, in a flourish, a spinning overhead strike that lands hard on your shield, buckling it. You stagger, barely catching yourself. Sand fills your sandals. Your ribs hum. The sword in your hand feels heavier with every heartbeat. Then he mouths something. You can't hear it over the crowd, so he says it again. Louder this time. Just for you. Kill me like you mean it. And suddenly the tension changes, because this isn't just performance anymore. He wants it real. Maybe he's testing you. Maybe he's tired of life. Maybe he just wants to feel something besides the inside of this hellhole. But either way, the show has slipped, and now the stakes are real. You're not sure what to do. You try to follow the choreography. You land the light cuts, push him backward, perform the sequence. But he throws off the rhythm. He lunges too fast. You block too late. He shoves you to the ground, and you hear gasps from the audience. This isn't how it's supposed to go. You scramble to your feet. Diodorus gives you an opening. You don't take it. He sneers. Pathetic. So you take it. You slam the edge of your shield into his knee, just like Doctore taught you. He drops. Hard. And for a split second, the noise around you vanishes. It's just you, him, your sword, and the silence that demands a choice. You raise the blade and hesitate. This isn't the arena. He's not condemned. You're not supposed to actually kill him, but his eyes say, do it. So you swing, controlled, just enough. The sword cuts across his shoulder, deep but not fatal. He screams, a good, loud, crowd-pleasing scream, and collapses into the dust. Blood soaks the sand. The crowd roars. Doctor watches, motionless. Then he nods. Match over. Diodorus is dragged off by 2 trainees. You catch his eye as he passes. He winks at you, blood trickling from his teeth. Bastard got what he wanted. A real moment. A taste of the edge. A scar with meaning. You stagger to the water trough and dunk your head in. The cold stings like punishment. But it's the closest thing to peace you've had in weeks. You look around the yard and see more matches underway. A man screaming while his opponent executions him with a theatrical stab to the ribs. Another spinning a net with just enough finesse to entangle his partner's legs. 2 trainees in a mock chariot fight using broken furniture and wildly confused donkeys. You lean against the trough, heart pounding, knowing what this really is. It's not training, it's branding. You're being sculpted, not into a better fighter, but into a product. Your scars are your resume. Your scream is your battle cry. Your blood? A marketing tool. And if you don't learn to make the crowd love your pain, Someone else will gladly take your place in the spotlight. That evening, you return to your mat in silence. No one speaks. Everyone aches. The day's performances play on loop behind your eyes. Diodorus's grin, the moment your blade kissed skin, the applause. You realize now, blood doesn't just flavor the sand, it sells it. You used to think a silent death was noble. You thought that maybe, if the time ever came, you'd grit your teeth, take the blade like a man, and die with your lips sealed and your dignity intact. That's what heroes do, right? That's what the old tales said. Then you came here, and you realized that in the eyes of the crowd, a silent death is a boring one. No one claps for a stoic corpse. They want noise. They want panic. They want the death rattle, not the death whimper. Screaming, after all, is how they know they're getting their money's worth. And today, you're being taught exactly how to scream. Pain is part of the act, Dottore explains. Though explains is generous. He yells it into your face while you're lying on the ground with a dislocated shoulder that another trainee helped you earn during a non-lethal drill. If they can't hear your suffering, they'll assume you're not trying hard enough. You nod. Or maybe you pass out for a second and your neck twitches. Either way, he's satisfied. The training today isn't about combat. It's about theatrics. You're lined up in the yard with the other unfortunate souls. All of you standing like slightly cracked statues waiting to crumble. Each one of you is told to practice a death, not an actual one, a convincing one. There's no dignity here. Just grunting, falling, twitching, flailing. Doctor demonstrates, slapping his own chest, spinning in place, and collapsing dramatically into the dust with his tongue out like a strangled goat. The man has range. You'd be impressed if you weren't already convinced he's clinically incapable of joy. Then he points to you. Show me how you die. You hesitate. Bad move. Crack. Staff to the shin. You drop. Not intentionally, but it works. You let your limbs go slack. Your eyes roll. Your chest spasm like you're struggling for breath. You let out a ragged gasp and cough into the dirt. Your ribs, still tender from the last arena drill, provide excellent material for pain authenticity. Dottore gives a curt nod. Better, still ugly, you rise. Barely. The next exercise involves voice work, not chanting, not war cries, screaming. Dottore makes each trainee take a blade to the thigh, not deep, just enough to make it sting, and instructs them to let the pain out like they're performing for 5,000 drunk Roman citizens with nothing better to do than critique your volume. When it's your turn, you grit your teeth. The blade cuts, shallow but sharp. You hiss, let out a broken gasp, and then bellow a half-groan, half-growl that echoes off the stone walls. Dottore grins. There. That's what victory sounds like. Someone behind you mutters, "That's what hemorrhaging sounds like." He's not wrong. You're sent to practice with a partner. Secundus, of course. His pain acting is unnervingly good. He throws himself down like he's being executed, clutches his stomach like he's been gutted, and wails so convincingly you almost stop mid-swing to check if he's actually dying. You've been practicing, you say between drills. He shrugs. I used to be in a traveling troupe. We mostly performed tragedies. Not much different, really. Just more blood here. You nod and try again. Fall. Moan. Twist your limbs in just the right way. Dottore claps once, believable. Now louder. That evening, after hours of staged agony, the yard smells like sweat, old wounds, and theatre. Your voice is raw. Your body is scraped. Your pride, long since dead, but you're learning something new. You're learning that the arena isn't about skill. It's about narrative. You're the underdog, the victim, the brave fool who survives just long enough to lose tragically. And if you do it well, they'll remember you. Not by name, maybe, but by the sound of your scream echoing off the marble walls. You thought yesterday was the performance. It wasn't. That was rehearsal. That was warm-up. That was the understudy limping through his lines while someone tried to stitch the set together with frayed rope and desperation. Today is the real thing. Today, a minor provincial festival is being held, just outside the city walls. The kind of event where every merchant suddenly has rare wares, every official polishes their ceremonial helmet, and every citizen pretends they've always cared about gladiators and not just wine and gossip. But the arena's open, and that means you're part of the entertainment package. You and 5 other trainees are dragged from your breakfast barley and handed freshly laundered tunics, each dyed a different shade of, "This man is not important." You're told to look presentable, which is rich, considering none of your bones are aligned properly and your left eye hasn't stopped twitching since Tuesday. Doctore's pacing like a warhound at the edge of a feast. "You are not here to fight," he explains. "You are here to sell the idea of fighting. The crowd wants fear. They want agony. They want to believe you're dying even when you're not." He jabs his staff toward a trainee with a crooked nose and knees that bend too much. "You? You're the criminal. You get caught. You get beaten. You die like a fool." Then he turns to you. "You're the hero's first kill." Your stomach drops. "The first kill," he repeats, "is the most important." It sets the tone. It tells the crowd what kind of bloodbath they're about to enjoy. You ask, carefully, "So, should I fight back?" He shrugs. "Enough to look brave, not enough to look skilled. You're not a threat. You're a stepping stone. Perfect. You're assigned a fake name, something like the Moor from Sicilia, which makes no sense geographically or ethnically, but sounds exotic enough for the crowd to pretend they care. The hero, a slightly more polished trainee with above-average abs and a well-practiced victory pose, nods at you with pity in his eyes. Not for your performance, for the bruises you're about to earn. The arena is buzzing. It's not a full house, but it might as well be. Merchants leaning over railings, priests pretending not to enjoy the carnage, children waving meat skewers and cheering every time someone bleeds. It's a vibrant sea of human indifference dressed up as festivity. The fight begins. You're shoved into the ring by a guard who kicks your ankle just hard enough to make you stumble theatrically. You enter the sand limping. The crowd loves it. You look across the arena and see the hero raise his blade, pose for the audience, and point at you like he's just declared war on gout. The music stops. The crowd hushes. Then he charges. Your cue. You lift your shield, stagger back, swing wide, slow, obvious, choreographed like a bad street play. He blocks, counters, slashes your side with a real blade that kisses the skin but doesn't dig. Blood drips. The crowd explodes. You scream. Louder than you've ever screamed in your life. Not out of pain, though there's definitely that, but because you know it's what they came for. You shriek like your organs have been scrambled. You fall backward, flailing, kicking up sand. You clutch your gut. You gasp. You crawl. You look up at the stands and see an old woman nodding approvingly. You're doing great. The hero circles, prolonging it. He lets the crowd drink in your pain. You swing weakly at his leg, a desperate, foolish gesture. He steps aside and plants a boot into your chest. You fly backward into the dirt, coughing up spit and pride. Then comes the finale. He lifts his sword. You raise a hand, not to beg, but to look brave. That's the trick. Die with flair, not fear. You time it perfectly, just before the blade drops. You throw your arms wide and roar like a man who's decided to face death with one last insult. He stabs. You twist. The blade grazes your ribs, just deep enough for pain, just shallow enough to heal. You flop to the ground with a full body shudder. The audience loses their minds. People are standing, clapping, whistling. You can hear bets being shouted, names being debated, coins exchanging hands. You just sold your suffering for 30 seconds of attention and a bowl of old lentils later tonight. They drag you off the sand like discarded theatre props. Dottore meets you behind the gate. He doesn't say, "Good job." He just nods and says, "They believed it." You screamed like a dying prince. You'll do. You sit in the infirmary afterward, shirt peeled away from the bleeding scrape on your ribs. Cassius slaps vinegar on it while muttering something about show-offs. You don't care. You're still riding the echo of the crowd's reaction, and for the first time in weeks, you feel something dangerously close to pride. Because today, you didn't just suffer, you performed. His name was Tiro. That was your first mistake, because names mean something here. Names are dangerous. Most of the men you train beside bleed beside. You only know by features. Scarface, crooked toe, that Gaul who grunts too much. You don't ask and they don't offer. It's easier that way. Easier to forget them when they don't get. Back up. But Tiro introduced himself on day 4. Just walked up to you while you were cleaning out a gash with barley mash, because that's all you had, and said, "That's not going to stop it from festering. Want some actual vinegar?" You blinked. He held out a flask. Not water, not spoiled wine. Vinegar. Real, stinging, skin-eating vinegar. You took it, you hissed, you cursed. He laughed. "Told you," he said. "That's the good stuff." You should have walked away, said nothing, forgotten him. But you didn't, because something about him, the way he stood, the way he spoke without flinching, felt different. Not soft, not friendly, not exactly, but solid. Tiro had the look of a man who died once already, and come back not because he wanted to, but because someone needed killing. He was older than most of the other recruits, not by much, but enough to carry himself like he knew. What came next? Short-cropped dark hair, nose broken at least twice, hands like they'd held swords before they held spoons. When others panicked during sparring, he waited, watched, countered. You first paired with him during shield drills. Everyone else treated those like punishment. He treated them like math. Every movement had purpose. Every block followed by a strike. No panic, no rage. Just brutal, practical violence. You barely lasted 2 passes before he knocked your shield sideways and tapped the flat of his blade against your neck. "Dead," he said, and walked off. That night, he gave you his bread ration. Said he wasn't hungry. You knew that was a lie, but you ate it anyway. The next day, he corrected your footwork. Didn't insult you. Just said, "You're leaving your right side open. You won't last in the arena like that." And the day after that, he helped you up after Doctore slammed you into the sand during one of his educational moments. You tried to brush him off. He didn't let you. He didn't say much. But when he did, you listened. Because in a place like this, surrounded by men who would happily crush your skull to get one slot closer to survival, Tiro was the closest thing to trust. Of course, you knew it couldn't last. There's a rule in the Ludus, and it's carved into every brick, every weapon, every scar. Don't get attached. The moment you care, the moment you start thinking someone else's life matters, is the moment you put a blade to your own throat and ask someone else to push. But you forgot. You got comfortable. You started sitting beside him at meals. Started asking about his past. And even worse, caring about the answers. He told you he used to be a soldier. Not one of the pampered legions, no. A conscript in some forgotten province where the roads were dust and the commanders were worse than the barbarians. He told you he fought because he had nothing else left, because it was the only thing he was still good at. He said it like it was a fact, not a tragedy. You believed him. And that's why, when Doctore called his name that morning, your stomach twisted in a way that had nothing to do with spoiled lentils. He stood immediately. No hesitation. Just a breath, a stretch, a quiet crack of his neck. You asked him who he was fighting. He said, "Aretiarius." You blinked. With the net and trident, he nodded. You frowned. "You ever fight one of those?" He smiled, just a little. "No, but I can learn fast." And with that, he was gone. You didn't go back to eating. You didn't move. You just stood there, staring at the gate like maybe, this time, friendship wasn't a curse. They called his name at sunrise. By midday, he was standing alone in the center of the arena. Sun burning down on his Shoulders, sand swirling around his feet like a warning. You weren't supposed to be there. Not officially. Only the chosen fighters and their handlers are allowed in the staging tunnel. But you lingered, pretending to carry water, pretending not to care. But you did. You watched through the narrow slats in the wooden gate as Tiro walked into the light. And for one brief moment, he looked back. Not at you, just back. Like he already knew this was the last time anyone would see his face. The crowd was restless today. A festival, again. The Romans find any excuse to celebrate death with roasted meat and warm wine. Children waved rags soaked in dye. Adults shouted names they didn't care about, and bets flew through the air like locusts. Most of them didn't know who Tiro was. To them, he was just another body. Another brief, bloody intermission between drinking and dice. But not to you. You knew the shape of his gait, the rhythm of his strikes. You'd seen him laugh once, not a real laugh, more of a chuckle through cracked lips, but it had felt like something, and now you were watching him walk into a fight you knew wasn't fair. Doctore had told you the truth behind the curtain. The Retiarius had been in 4 matches already. Undefeated, fast, precise, vicious. He wasn't some flailing net slinger throwing rope like a fisherman with vertigo. No. This one had technique. The net wasn't a prop. It was a weapon. And the trident? That wasn't for poking. It was for puncturing. You watched as Tiro raised his short sword in salute. A clean, simple movement. No arrogance, no pageantry, just duty. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't know him. They cheered for blood, not character. Then the Retiarius stepped into view. Tall, bare-chested, arms like steel cables, his net all ready, swinging in slow, measured loops. The crowd roared his name, not Tiro, but his name. The net. That's what they called him. Not a man, a tool, a concept. The horn sounded, and Tiro ran. Not away, toward, straight into the trap. He moved low, just like he'd taught you. Shield angled, sword held firm. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a fool. He was doing what he always did, fighting smart. The first net toss missed. The crowd booed. Tiro circled, cutting left, keeping his shield up, testing the range. You started to hope. That was your second mistake. The second throw caught the edge of his blade. Not enough to bind, just enough to distract. That's when the trident came. Fast, sharp, deadly. It slipped beneath the rim of the shield and carved upward through ribs, through lung. Clean, surgical, cruel. Tiro staggered, dropped to one knee. The crowd loved it. They didn't see the pain in his eyes, the way he tried to speak but couldn't, the way his mouth opened just barely, as if he was going to say something. Maybe a curse, maybe a prayer. He didn't fall. Not yet. He stood, swung once, wild, hopeless, and then collapsed face down in the sand. The Retiarius raised his weapon. The crowd erupted. You didn't. You turned away. Not because you couldn't watch, but because you already knew how this story ended. You'd seen the signs, the pacing, the matchup, the silence in Doctore's tone when he listed the morning fights. You just didn't want to believe it. He was carried out minutes later, bleeding and still. Not dead. Not yet. You tried to follow. The guards shoved you back. You tried again. Cassius found you. He won't make it, he said flatly. Trident pierced too high. You asked if you could see him. Cassius hesitated, then nodded. You found him inside the medicus cell, breathing in short, wet gulps. His skin was pale. His eyes were open, but distant. Not afraid, not gone, just somewhere in between. You knelt beside him and said the only thing you could think of. I told you not to be likable. He smiled. Just barely. Then he whispered, don't let them name me wrong. You frowned. What? If they carve it, he said, on the wall. Tell them my name. You nodded. Then he exhaled. And that was it. No final gasp. No poetic fade. Just a man too tired to keep holding on. You stayed there long after the others left. The room grew. Darker. The torches burned lower. Eventually, Dottore stepped in. He was good, he said. Not kindly, just honestly. You didn't answer. You made the mistake, he added, of making him more than a fighter. You looked up. He was more than a fighter. Dottore stared, then nodded once. Just once. Then remember him, and walked away. You still see Tiro in your dreams, not in the fight, not in the blood, but sitting near the fire, chewing bread, watching the stars like they might eventually fall and crush this whole cursed place. And you remember what he said, don't let them name me wrong. So you carve it, later that week, not deep, not obvious, just enough, into the wood frame of your bunk. Tiro, not a victim, not a number, not just another body on the sand. He was yours, and that's why it hurts. They didn't even give you time to bury him. Tiro's ashes were gone by morning. Cassius burned the body himself, not because he cared, but because he had to clear the infirmary for the next one. The space gets crowded, the beds get reused, the blood gets wiped up, eventually. But the air still smells like what he left behind. Burnt linen, old wounds, and the ghost of someone who should have lived longer. You don't cry. You don't have the time, and you don't have the luxury. Because the moment your boots touch the yard again, Doctor is already calling your name. You step out into the morning sun, and it's like the world hasn't even noticed anything's missing. The sand's still hot, the practice weapons still warped, the air still tastes like sweat and defeat. The men around you look up briefly, some with pity, some with envy, some with the emptiness of men who've forgotten how to care. Doctor doesn't bother with a greeting. You're fighting this afternoon. You stare at him. Already. He doesn't blink. You survived last time. That makes you valuable, and the crowd liked your scream. You want to argue. You want to say you haven't healed, that you've barely slept, that the last time you held a blade, you were still shaking from watching your friend die in the sand like livestock in a festival slaughter. But there's no point. You know how this works now. In the ludus, pain is potential. Survival is proof of market value. If you're still standing, you're still for sale. Cassius tapes your ribs again, muttering under his breath about torn muscle and bone bruising. He tells you not to twist too hard, not to fall too far, not to inhale too sharply. You nod at all of it. None of it will matter. Your name's already been scribbled on the slate outside the gate. Secundus passes you a piece of flatbread during breakfast, eyes down, voice low. Don't do anything noble, he says. You nod, because noble gets you remembered by ghosts and forgotten by crowds. By midday, you're standing in the shade of the tunnel again, sword in one hand, shield in the other, stomach turning over itself like it's trying to crawl away. You've done this before. That doesn't make it easier. It just makes the fear more familiar. Doctory leans against the wall beside you, arms folded. The crowd asked for you. You gave them a show last time. They want more. You ask, what kind of opponent? Numidian, light armor, quick feet, smart. You glance across the gate. You see him, a lean man with long arms, spinning his blade in slow, fluid arcs, stretching like he's done this 100 times before. No nerves, just focus. You already hate him. The gates creak. The light pours in. You walk forward and feel every eye lock onto you like nails pressed into your skin. The heat hits you first. Then the sound. Not a roar, not yet. Just a low hum of hunger. They don't know your name, but they recognize your silhouette. You're the one who screamed just right. The one who bled just enough. The one who lived, inconveniently, when they thought you'd fall in Act 1. And now, they want a sequel. The announcer calls your names, real or fabricated, it doesn't matter. He throws out titles like Bait, The Red Vulture, The Desert Blade, The Phoenix of Rome. All lies, all noise. None of it matters once the weapons start to move. The horn sounds. Your opponent doesn't hesitate. He moves like lightning wrapped in silk, smooth, sharp, and fast enough to make your knees lock. His blade whistles through the air as he circles, testing you. Not lunging, not slashing, just observing, calculating. You don't have time to breathe. He fakes a step left, darts right, slams the flat of his blade against your shield. You stagger. The crowd cheers. They like seeing you off balance. He grins. He's playing you. You realize too late that he's not here to win quickly. He's here to humiliate you artistically. You swing wide, trying to catch him off guard. He ducks under it and taps your leg with the hilt. Not hard, just enough to remind you he's faster, better, more comfortable in this pit of death. You grit your teeth because they don't want you to win. They want you to struggle. They want you to pant, gasp, stumble, scream, and then, maybe, claw your way back into the fight. That's the act. That's what sells. You're not a warrior. You're content. So you raise your shield again, adjust your grip, and prepare to make this fight flashier. Because in the arena, pain isn't a punishment. It's your only currency. The problem isn't that you're losing. It's that you're losing well. And that's worse. Because now the crowd's invested. They've seen you take hit after hit, stagger to your feet, shake the dust from your face like a stubborn cockroach, and keep swinging. You're giving them drama, suffering, a real-time tragedy with all the pacing of a cheap amphitheater play and the added bonus of actual blood. You try to slow things down, catch your breath, block a few strikes to reset your footing, but your opponent isn't having it. He's fast, not just quick, cleverly fast. He doesn't just move. He cuts angles, dances just out of reach, forces you to stretch your limits until your joints scream. You swing wide, he punishes. You step in, he feints, slaps your shield aside, taps your ribs again. It's not a beating, it's a performance, and he's the conductor. You're the cymbal he bangs for laughs. Another slash, shallow but loud. Your forearm stings. The blade didn't go deep, but it painted the sand nicely. The audience reacts like it's a festival, like someone just won a bet. Coins hit the ground. Someone cheers your name. Not your real one, just worm. Ophagophe, course. You're still worm to them. You try to change the rhythm. Fake a stumble. Drop to one knee. Bait a reckless charge. He doesn't fall for it. Instead, he flips the blade in his hand and lands the pommel squarely against your temple. Flash, ringing, stars. Your ears buzz. Your feet go soft. Your mouth tastes like pennies and old fear. You blink, slow. The world is sideways. Your shield's on the ground. Your gladius is still in your hand, but your fingers feel wrong, like they belong to someone else. The crowd loves it. They start clapping, chanting, not for him, for the moment, for you, bleeding and swaying like a half-drunk marionette. This is what they came for, the edge of death, framed like a painting. Somewhere in the blur, you hear Doctore yelling, not at you, for you. Get up, not because he cares, because he knows the script, knows that if you die now, it's anticlimactic. You've sold too much suffering. You need to survive just long enough to make the final act worth it. So you stand. You don't remember how. You just do. Blood trails from your brow. You huff like a dying ox. But your legs still work, and your teeth still exist. And your sword is still in your hand. Your opponent circles again, less smug now. He expected you to fall. You didn't. So you give them what they want. You roar. Not because you're brave, but because the sound buys you seconds. The crowd roars back. It echoes in your skull like a war drum. You lunge. Ugly. Slow. Wild. He dodges. But now he's reacting. Not controlling. And that's your window. He steps forward fast, blade coming in low, but you drop, let yourself fall, and sweep your leg beneath him. It's not elegant, it's not clean, it's not even smart, but it's chaotic, and the crowd lives for chaos. He trips. The crowd explodes. You're both on the ground now, rolling, grunting, spitting, trading blows that would embarrass a soldier but delight a mob. He slashes across your arm. You elbow him in the ribs. He grunts. You grab a handful of sand and throw it in his face. He screams. It's not honorable, but it's flashy, and that's all that matters. You rise first, just barely. He's blinking grit from his eyes. You bring your blade down on his shoulder, hard enough to knock him flat, not hard enough to kill. Doctore calls the fight, not the crowd, not the hero. Doctore. And when he raises your wrist, the crowd actually cheers. Not just noise, applause. You don't know what to do with it. It doesn't feel good. It feels foreign, like praise wrapped in barbed wire. You're bleeding from 4 different places. Your arm might be dislocated. You can't hear out of your left ear. Your chest feels like it's wrapped in stone, and they're clapping because you survived, not because you were better, because you were louder, messier, more exciting. They don't want champions. They want carnage with a little bit of plot. Back in the holding corridor, Doctore doesn't congratulate you. He doesn't even look you in the eye. You're not skilled, he mutters, but you know how to get up. He walks away. You sit, you breathe, you laugh. Bitter, shallow, because this is your reward for survival. More survival, and next time, they'll want even more blood. There are no private baths in a gladiator school, no scented oils, no marble tubs, no slave girls to dab your brow while gently scrubbing the gore from your pores. That's the fantasy the rich like to imagine, the myth they feed themselves while watching you nearly die in the arena for their amusement. What you get instead is this: a stone trench half filled with murky water, 1 wooden bucket shared between 10 men, and a bar of soap that might actually be a brick with ambitions. The bathhouse is little more than a low-roofed cave behind the training yard, constantly damp, perpetually dark, and echoing with the sounds of sighs, grunts, and the occasional wail when open wounds meet cold water. You're herded in here like livestock at the end of every match day. All of you limping, bleeding, blistered, half-conscious, and fully ashamed. Today, you arrive second. The first man, a Thracian with a split lip and a bent nose, is already washing the dried blood from his thighs with the grace of a cow in a thunderstorm. He nods at you, says nothing. You strip, not because you want to, but because not doing so gets you mocked or worse, assigned to scrub the latrine trench again. You pull off your tunic and wince. The dried blood tugs at your skin like old glue. The cut on your arm reopens for the 3rd time. You taste metal in your mouth and realize you've been clenching your teeth since you walked off the sand. You step into the water. It's not warm. It's never warm. It's cold, with a layer of filth clinging to the surface like a second skin. You dip the bucket in, pour it over your shoulders, and hiss as it hits the scrapes along your back. You don't scream. You've done enough of that today. Instead, you grimace, like you're trying to intimidate the pain into going away. 1 by 1, the others file in. Secundus, the big Gaul with the broken wrist, a Carthaginian who still smells like the vomit he coughed up after his match. Even the kid who fainted during the warm-up spar and got kicked for his trouble. They all enter. They all strip. They all carry the same look. Not pain, not fear, not even exhaustion. Numbness. You try to clean your arms. The soap brick scrapes across a scab. You bite your tongue and keep going. Someone next to you groans. Someone else mutters a prayer. Someone farts, loudly. No one reacts. This is where gladiators go to fall apart. In private, in silence, together. You glance around and realize there's nowhere else in the world you could stand naked beside. 10 other men, all bleeding, scarred, hunched, and somehow more human than you ever feel under armor. Secundus hands you the bucket, doesn't speak, doesn't need to, You pour another round over your head. The water is darker now. The blood doesn't all wash away. Some of it just rearranges. You rub at your arms again, this time noticing the pattern of bruises like a map of every mistake you made during the last fight. Someone asks how the Numidian was. You say, fast. They nod. He'll last a few more weeks, someone else says. That's the highest praise anyone gets here. Another man chuckles and holds up his hand. One finger's missing. Guess who tried to block with his hand instead of his shield? More laughter. Not joyous, not mocking, just familiar. This is the therapy no one talks about. 10 broken men standing hip-deep in tepid misery, pretending that soaking off the grime somehow resets everything they've seen and done. You clean your ribs. The cut there still oozes, a little. The bruise beneath it pulses like a slow heartbeat. You think of Tiro. You think of his final words. You think of the sound the crowd made when they cheered your last fight. You think about how they never saw this part. They don't see the aftermath. They don't see 10 naked men scrubbing blood from places blood should never be. They don't hear the groans when someone tries to lift their arm above shoulder height. They don't smell the rot clinging to unwashed wounds. They don't know how close each of you is to breaking. Quietly, in the space where no one's clapping. You close your eyes. The water's cold. The pain is familiar, the silence is heavy, and somehow, this is the safest you've felt all week. Because in here, there's no performance, no crowd, just the quiet dignity of shared suffering. You step out of the bath trench with skin scrubbed raw and muscles aching in ways that defy anatomy. You're cleaner, sure, but not healed, not rested, not better, just damp and slightly less stained. A pig rinsed off before its next slaughter. Someone tosses you a towel, if you can call it that. It's more like a damp rectangle of coarse wool that smells like a dozen other men before you. You pat yourself dry in the least offensive spots and wring the blood out of your tunic before dragging it back over your head. It clings to your skin, still sticky at the seams. A perfect reminder that everything you washed off in that trench is still on you, just invisible now. You want to lie down. You want 5 minutes with your back flat, your eyes closed, and your thoughts somewhere else, anywhere else. But that's not how this place works. Because as soon as you step back into the open air of the yard, Doctor is waiting. Of course he is. He doesn't speak at first. He doesn't have to. The look on his face says enough. Disgust, boredom, mild amusement, and the permanent undercurrent of, why aren't you already doing something painful? Drills, he says, pointing to the center pit. Group formation. You stare at him. I just fought, you manage, voice scratchy, eyes stinging from the bathhouse smoke. He nods. You just fought badly. Maybe this will help. There's no point arguing. He doesn't believe in mercy. He believes in repetition. You're not a human being to him. You're a whetstone, only useful when scraped until it sparks. You join. The others, still dripping, still sore, still reeking faintly of vinegar and humiliation. 10 men, arranged in 2 lines, shields locked, weapons ready. Except ready is a generous word. Half of them are half limping. One is coughing blood. Secundus can't lift his left arm fully, and you're pretty sure the Gaul's foot is pointing in the wrong direction. None of it matters. Doctore wants drills, so you do drills. You march forward in formation. You raise your shields. You strike. Block. Retreat. Again. 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 He paces along the edge, barking corrections. Shield tighter. Keep formation. Don't drop your back foot like a drunk goat. Your shoulder burns. Your ribs pulse. The cut under your tunic reopens again, a warm trickle reminding you that bandages here are mostly decorative. The worst part? This isn't even punishment. It's routine. The bath didn't signal rest. It signaled readiness. You're not being cleaned. You're being reset, wiped down, so the next injuries don't get infected before they become interesting. At one point, your shield slips, just an inch, barely. Doctor is beside you in a flash. He slams his staff into your side, not hard enough to cripple, but hard enough to send a jolt through your spine. Fall like that in the arena, and they'll stick a spear in your kidney before you blink. You don't respond. You just nod and get back in line. Because that's what's expected. Not improvement, just obedience. You glance at the others. The kid next to you, the one who vomited his first week. He's not a kid anymore. His face is harder now. Still scared, but quieter about it. His tunic is darker than yours, soaked through from both sweat and shame. But he's standing, moving, trying. Even the man with the bad foot hasn't dropped out yet. He grits his teeth and stomps along in rhythm with the others, each step a statement that says, "I'm still here, damn you." You realize then, this is the closest thing to brotherhood you'll ever know, not friendship. That's too soft a word. This is survival in unison. A shared rhythm of misery, loyalty by necessity, compassion expressed through grunted warnings and bloody handoffs. The drills last an hour, maybe more. Time bends in the heat, warping between each command and each dull thud of your own heartbeat. When Doctora finally calls it, your legs are jelly, your chest is heaving, and your vision pulses with red, but you're still on your feet. You've passed the test, not by excelling, but by enduring. That's all they want from you here. Not glory, not brilliance. Just that you keep coming back after every knock, every slice, every humiliating plunge into communal bathwater and soul erosion. You collapse onto your mat that night without removing your tunic. Your hands are too tired. Your eyes shut before your head hits the straw. The man beside you is already snoring, badly, loudly. His nose whistles when he breathes. You don't care. You sleep anyway. And in the dark, you dream not of battle, but of buckets, cold water, the sound of 10 other broken men trying to remember what their own skin feels like beneath the blood. Because here, even cleansing becomes trauma. You wake up with your face stuck to your mat, not from sweat, from blood. Dried, crusted. Yours or someone else's. You can't remember anymore. Doesn't matter. It flakes off when you sit up, and that's what passes for hygiene in the ludus. The mat's damp. Your ribs crackle like burning kindling. Your jaw feels misaligned. Your shoulder is still in recovery, which here means you can lift it high enough to scream when someone tapes it. You're almost grateful for the pain. It proves you're still a person, not just meat. That's when Doctore's voice cuts, through the barracks like a blade. Worm, you've been selected. You freeze, selected. A word that should carry weight, honor, pride. Here, it means you're trending, and not in a good way. You shuffle to the yard like you've aged 20. Years overnight. The other trainees part to let you through. Some nod, some won't meet your eyes. A few look worried, like they've seen this happen before. They have. So have you. You've watched it from the side. Now it's your turn on the altar. Doctore stands by the weapon racks, arms crossed, face carved from stone. You've been noticed, he says flatly. That's bad, right? He doesn't laugh. It means they're asking for you by name. Worm? He scowls. No, something worse. A new one. He holds up a slate and reads, Flamma Manus, the flame hand. You blink. Why? Doctore shrugs. Marketing. They saw you win last week. You bled well. You yelled better. Now they want you again. So that's it. You're no longer the nobody limping behind a shield wall. You're content. You're merchandise. A gladiator with momentum. And momentum means expectation. The sponsors want a show. They've arranged a private exhibition. Smaller crowd. Richer bloodthirst. You're told this isn't about life or death. It's about performance. You're here to sell emotion, as if your exhaustion is an accessory, as if pain has a dress code. They dress you in something meant to impress. Leather straps across the chest, bracers polished until they reflect sunlight, a red cloak that drapes just right when you swing. All of it calculated. You look less like a fighter, more like a tragic hero from some back alley play where the actors actually get stabbed. You're handed a gladius. This one is lighter, flashier. Its blade curves slightly, not for better cutting, just for better silhouette against the sun. You hold it and feel the weight of it, not physically, symbolically, because if you win this one too, you won't rest for days. You're led to the side arena, smaller than the grand pit, more intimate, surrounded by benches where the powerful sight with their grapes and gossip, pretending to care about technique while really watching to see if your death will go viral. You scan the crowd, senators, merchants, a few ladies in sheer tunics with pet monkeys. You feel their gaze on your skin like oil. They aren't here to be moved, they're here to be amused. And then you see him, your opponent. He's young, pretty, blonde hair, tall. His armor fits like it was stitched to his body by love and money. His nickname? The Golden Hawk. You hate him immediately, not because he looks soft. He doesn't. He's built like a statue, with just enough muscle to be intimidating and just enough grace to make the audience swoon. You hate him because he already knows the part he's here to play, and so do you. He's the rising star. You're the one who surprised everyone. This fight will decide which of you gets upgraded and which of you gets thrown back into the pit. For filler roles, he nods at you before the fight. Polite, controlled. You nod back, already planning which ribs of his you'd like to fracture. The announcer steps into the ring and begins the show. They don't call you Worm. They call you the flame-handed warrior of Latium. You don't know why. Maybe you lifted your sword just right under torchlight once. Maybe you bled the way they liked. Maybe the name was pulled out of someone's wine cup. Doesn't matter. You wear it now. The announcer lifts his hands. The crowd hushes. The Golden Hawk raises his sword in a graceful arc, salutes the crowd. Then you. You raise yours slower, jaw tight. You already feel the story writing itself. Golden Boy versus the wounded survivor. Grace versus grit. Beauty versus burn marks. And you know something else. You're going to lose. Not because you want to, because if you win again, they'll never let you stop. The horn sounds, the match begins, and for a moment, you hesitate. Not out of fear, out of calculation, because you're no longer allowed to just fight. Now, every swing you take has to be a performance. Every bruise you suffer has to look poetic. Every block, every parry, every breath must feel like a choreographed tragedy the crowd can sip wine to. The Golden Hawk moves first. He's fast. Not breathtakingly fast. Not reckless. Just efficient. Clean. The kind of speed that comes from someone who's been practicing in front of handmaidens instead of sandpits. His strikes are sharp, balanced, and wide enough to draw gasps from. The front row without actually connecting. He's not fighting you. He's dancing for them. So you adjust. You take a few steps back. Let him close the distance. Let him land a glancing blow across your shoulder. Enough to sting. Enough to drip red onto your cloak. The crowd loves it. You grit your teeth and give them what they want. You stumble. Just a little. Dramatically. You swing upward with a grunt. He dodges, twirls, lashes out with the flat of his blade against your side. It hurts. Of course it hurts. But you shout louder than the pain warrants. Project it. Paint the moment. There it is. That cheer again. You're doing it. You're performing agony. For a man who barely knew how to hold a sword 2 months ago, you've somehow become watchable, palatable, an underdog story with just the right number of broken ribs. You strike now, fast, lower than expected. You aim for his legs, not to cripple, but to surprise. It connects, not hard, but clean. The Golden Hawk stumbles, the audience gasps. Now he's bleeding, and suddenly the tone changes. The crowd shifts, because maybe you weren't just here to die gracefully after all. Maybe this is the upset match. Maybe the dirt-covered flame hand will actually burn the pretty bird. You press forward. Your sword moves with urgency now, not because you're desperate, but because you can feel the momentum shift. The Golden Hawk isn't smiling anymore. His movements get tighter, sharper, less theatrical, more real. He slashes toward your shoulder. You deflect, but too slow. The blade grazes your neck. You feel the warmth instantly, but you don't retreat. You roar. You slam your shield into his side, hard enough to stagger him. The crowd erupts. You hear laughter, shock. Someone shouts your name. Not Worm. Flammer. It feels foreign, like a title you stole and now have to live up to. He comes at you again. This time with real frustration. You duck. You spin. You land. Another cut across his thigh. Shallow but dramatic. It spatters blood across the sand, and it's bright enough, messy enough, to make the nobles up front flinch with glee. Doctore is watching from the shadows. You can't see his face. But you know he's measuring everything, not just how you move, how you sell, how you adapt, how you bleed without breaking. The hawk overcommits on his next strike. You dodge. You slam your shoulder into his chest. He falls, not hard, but it's a fall. You move fast, not to kill, that's not the script, but to end it. You press your blade to his chest, hovering, deliberate, just long enough for everyone to see. The announcer steps forward. Victor. Flamma Manus! The nobles clap. It's measured, not a roar, but approval. You back away. The hawk sits up, panting, eyes burning. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. You've taken something from him. Momentum. And that's the worst thing you can steal from someone in this place. Back in the prep corridor, Cassius is waiting with a rag and a grin. Well, he says, guess you're a favorite now. You don't respond. Your legs are shaking, your sides throbbing, your neck's still bleeding. You'll be booked for a full match within the week, he continues. Maybe something with animals, or a 3-man rotation. Nobles love a rising star. You mutter, that sounds awful. He slaps your shoulder. Congratulations, you're marketable. Back in the barracks, the other trainees are waiting. A few clap, a few nod. Secundus raises his cup in your direction. Flamma! He calls, out. The boy's on fire. You force a smile. It hurts your face, because this is the reward. Not rest, not safety, but attention. And attention is hunger, sharpened. You lie down that night not feeling proud, but exposed, like a man standing naked on a stage, while someone else scribbles notes about where to stab next time for better drama. Because when you win, they don't stop watching. They just start expecting more. You wake up before the horn. Not because you're well rested. You haven't slept deeply in weeks. Not since the hawk. Not since they started calling you Flammer with reverence instead of mockery. Your body's too sore to let you sleep. And your brain's too aware of what today is to let you forget. It's quiet. Too quiet. There's a certain sound you grow used to in the ludus. Groans from half-conscious trainees rolling off their mats. The clank of armor being dragged across stone. Doctor's voice slashing through the air like a blade made of gravel and scorn. But this morning, none of it. The silence tells you everything. Today is your final match. Not final in the literal sense. That's not what they'll call it. They'll call it a promotion, a test, an honor, a chance to prove you're more than a survivor, that you're worth betting real coin on, that you're worth owning. Because make no mistake, this isn't freedom, it's eligibility. You sit up on your mat, slowly, so your ribs don't protest too loudly. The scar from your last fight, the one across your collarbone that the crowd loved so much they painted it in chalk at the wine stalls, is healing wrong. Your legs are stiff, your neck clicks when you turn it, your shoulder still doesn't raise fully. You look less like a champion, more like a painting of a man halfway through being digested. And yet, you're the one they've picked. Secundus is already awake, sitting across from you, polishing the edge of a gladius that's been through 3 owners and 2 funerals. He looks up when you move. So, he says, today's the day. You nod. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. There's no celebration for this sort of thing. Doctor appears at the barracks door, not stomping, not shouting, just standing, watching, You've never seen him this still. You're up, he says. No nicknames, no insults, not even worm. That's how you know it's serious. You stand and stretch. It's not really stretching anymore. More like creaking into functionality. You put on the tunic they give you, freshly laundered, dyed deep crimson with gold trim. It's ceremonial. They want you to look like a champion, not for your sake, for theirs. Cassius tapes your ribs again. You've lost count of how many times he's done it. This time he doesn't speak, just looks at you with something like caution, not pity, not pride, just an awareness that by sunset he might be cleaning your blood out of the arena tiles. They hand you a new gladius, real iron, no bloodstains, balanced, lethal. You hold it and feel the weight of everything you've survived pressing into the hilt. This blade doesn't care how far you've come. It only cares if you'll swing first. Doctor leads you through the corridor. It's longer today. Or maybe your legs just feel heavier. You pass men you've bled beside. A few nod. One claps you on the shoulder. No one says good luck. That's not how things work here. They know, and so do you, that this fight isn't about victory. It's about presentation. Because win or lose, this is the match that decides whether you live as an asset or die as a footnote. You've got patrons watching, Doctore says as you near the gate. A few senators, some generals, even a Lannister from Capua. You glance at him. Think they'll like me? He shrugs. They'll like blood. Of course they will. The arena gate opens, and the light nearly blinds you. You step out into it like a man entering judgment. The air is thick with incense and expectation. The sand has been raked smooth, fresh lines painted across it like a funeral. Mosaic. Shields are posted along the rim. Decorative, not defensive. This isn't a battlefield. It's a stage. The crowd is larger than usual. No drunken slurring today. These people are important. They sit beneath shaded canopies, eating grapes off silver trays while watching you walk into your final reckoning. You hear your new name called out by the announcer. Flammer, Flamehand of Latium, survivor of 8 matches, slayer of the Golden Hawk. A title that sounds more like a novel than a life. Across the arena, your opponent enters. He's older, larger, built like a siege tower in human skin. He doesn't smile, doesn't posture, just walks to the center and waits, gripping a double-edged spatha like he's already bored. You know the type. He's not here to fight you. He's here to measure you. This isn't his test. It's yours. You step forward, raising your blade in salute. Not because you want to, because that's what they came to see. A man who knows the choreography of ritual combat. A man who bleeds respectfully. The horn sounds. Your legs shift. You lower your stance. You try to breathe. This is it. This is everything. And either you will walk out of here reborn, or they'll carry what's left of you out in pieces and sell your armor to the next hopeful fool who looks good in red. The first blow rattles your arm so hard you nearly drop the sword. You didn't see it coming. You knew he was fast. They warned you he was fast. But the man across from you doesn't move like a human. He moves like falling stone. Sudden, absolute, inevitable. His sword crashes against yours with the kind of power that makes your knees bend involuntarily, like you're bowing to your own death. The crowd gasps. You stumble back. Not because you're showboating, not for the drama, but because if you hadn't, your wrist would be paste and your sword would be buried in the sand next to your teeth. The man, your opponent, your executioner, doesn't follow through. He just waits. Testing. Not your reflexes. Not your form. Your usefulness. Because this fight isn't about defeating you. He could have done that already. This fight is about putting on a show while gauging just how much punishment you can take before the audience gets bored. You circle him slowly. Keep your blade up, eyes on his hips, where real movement always starts. He doesn't blink. He doesn't breathe loud enough to hear. You're fighting a statue carved from ruin and warfare. You lunge. You have to. The crowd needs to see you try. He parries with an effortless flick and smashes his pommel into your side. You spin from the impact, not gracefully, just enough to fall hard, kick up dust, make the nobility lean forward in their cushioned chairs and whisper, "Maybe he's done." You're not, but you want to be. You roll, scramble upright, taste blood in your mouth. Your ribs, the same ones, Cassius wrapped this morning, are throbbing now. You think something cracked, or tore, or both. Breathing feels optional. Standing feels like a negotiation with gravity that you're quickly losing. He attacks again. Not to kill, just to wound. Slash across your shoulder, not deep but deliberate, enough to let blood trickle in a thin line down your arm, soaking the edge of your crimson tunic until it turns a deeper red. The crowd loves it. You hear clapping, even cheers. You're bleeding artfully, dying photogenically. You're succeeding. You block his next strike and swing low, a desperate, ugly move that buys you 2 seconds and a moment of balance. He steps back. You breathe. You blink sweat from your eyes. The sand beneath your feet is soft, too soft. You'll slip again if you don't shift, so you pivot, angle your stance. He notices. His head tilts, almost curious. You feint left. He doesn't fall for it, but he hesitates. And that's all you need. You drive forward. You don't aim for a kill. You aim to surprise. Your blade clips his leg. Not enough to stop him, but enough to mark him. And the crowd erupts. Not because it was brilliant. It wasn't. It was desperate. But they felt it. And for one moment, you're not the underdog. You're the defiant ember, still glowing in the ash. He growls, not in pain. In irritation, you've made him adjust. You dodge the next swing by inches. You parry the next 2. On the third, he lands a blow across your thigh that drops you to one knee. You scream. You're not sure if it's real or performance anymore. Does it matter? You rise, limping, grinning through bloodied teeth. The crowd eats it up. You spit to clear your mouth and realize you've lost a tooth. Probably not a useful one. Hopefully. And then he stops. Just for a second. Your opponent, the man who was supposed to break you, end you, drag you off stage with the crowd clapping over your corpse, lowers his weapon half an inch. You're not sure why. You blink. He says something. You can't hear it over the roar. Maybe it's a warning, maybe a compliment, maybe just, get ready. Then he swings again. You duck under it and slam your shoulder into his chest. It's like running into a door frame. He doesn't fall, but he moves. You spin. Stab. A clean slice across his back. He winces. You step back. He turns, sword raised, and then he stops. You're panting, barely upright. He looks at you, then at the crowd. Then, with calculated precision, he drops to one knee, gasps. Someone shouts. You blink, stunned, because you didn't win. He let you have it. He gave you the ending. And just like that, you understand. This wasn't a test of strength. It was a handover. They needed a new star, a new story, a new symbol for the arena, someone to carry the torch. He was retiring. You were his replacement. And this was your promotion ceremony, written in bruises. The horn sounds. The announcer raises your name. Your real one? No, just the one they branded you with. Flammer. The crowd chants it. You don't raise your arms. You barely lift your sword. You just nod, because you're too tired for anything else. Later, back in the tunnel, Cassius wraps your leg. Secundus sits beside you, silent. Doctor stands nearby, arms crossed. You're alive, he says. You nod. You're favored, he adds. That means more fights, more blood, less rest. You nod again. You did well. That, you weren't expecting. You look at him. He doesn't smile, but he claps a hand on your shoulder. It's not soft. It's real. That night, you lie on your mat, staring at the rafters. You're not free. You're not safe. You're not finished, but you're not Worm. anymore. You're Flammer. And tomorrow, you fight again. Because in the end, you survived.